What if the person you humiliated ended up holding your entire future in their hands? When Ms. Victoria, a wealthy, entitled woman, looks down on her humble chauffeur, she thinks her power and money will protect her. But she's in for the shock of her life. Watch until the end to see how karma turns the tables. Before we begin, let us know where in the world you are watching our story. Comment your location. Let's begin. Mr. James has been dedicated to his work, showing up every day with the same unshakable sense of duty and pride. His job may not come with fancy titles or great wealth, but to him, it is meaningful and valuable. Every day, he drives people to their destinations, not just transporting them physically, but ensuring they feel comfortable, safe, and respected along the way. This sense of service is ingrained in him. Mr. James's life hasn't been easy, but he has learned to take every challenge with a smile. His mother, who raised him alone, taught him the importance of hard work, dignity, and treating others with kindness. "You may not have the world's riches, but your heart is your true wealth," she often said. Mr. James carries this lesson with him, believing that everyone deserves to be treated with decency, no matter their background or behavior. Every day, he wakes up early, straightens his uniform, and makes sure his car is spotless, ready for the day ahead. His uniform is always neatly pressed, and his shoes are polished to a shine, reflecting his commitment to his role. For Mr. James, his work isn't just a job, it's a matter of pride. He takes the time to greet everyone with warmth, whether they acknowledge him or not. He knows many people don't see beyond his role as a chauffeur, but he doesn't mind. To him, respect is a choice, not a reaction. Despite his outward calmness, Mr. James carries a deep love for his family, particularly his elderly mother, who has been ill for some time. Much of his salary goes to pay for her medical expenses, but he never complains. His goal is to make her proud, showing that regardless of life's difficulties, he can still hold his head high and treat others with the respect they often refuse to give him. In the world he lives in, respect and kindness are not always reciprocated, but he believes in spreading them anyway, hoping it might make a difference one day. Ms. Victoria, the rich and arrogant businesswoman. On the other side of the city, in a towering penthouse overlooking the bustling streets, lives Ms. Victoria. She's a woman of wealth and power, accustomed to having everything her way. Her mornings begin with a flurry of phone calls, meetings, and planning, but she never has to lift a finger for anything she needs. Her staff is always there, ready to fulfill her every demand. Ms. Victoria believes that her money and status make her superior to those around her, especially those who work for her. She views her staff as mere tools, people whose job it is to serve her and stay invisible. Ms. Victoria, in her late 30s, is impeccably dressed in designer clothes and accessories, a constant display of her wealth. Her heels click sharply on the marble floors of her home as she moves about, always in a rush to get somewhere, to close a deal, or to be seen at an important event. Her hair is always perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and her presence intimidating. She is used to people looking up to her, whether it's out of admiration or fear. To her, the world is a place where only the strongest survive, and money is the ultimate power. But underneath her glamorous appearance lies a heart hardened by years of feeling like she always had to prove herself. She inherited her wealth from her late father, a stern man who taught her that power and control were the only ways to navigate the world. In her eyes, showing weakness was unacceptable, and so she built walls around herself, believing that people were only as valuable as what they could offer her. Her interactions with people below her status, especially her staff, are cold and detached. She doesn't care to know their names or their stories. After all, they're just there to make her life easier. When she's displeased, which happens often, she makes it known in a voice that can cut like a knife. She complains about the smallest of things, a smudge on her glass, a minute's delay in her schedule, or a button not perfectly aligned on a uniform. Her words can be harsh, and she doesn't hesitate to belittle those who serve her. To Ms. Victoria, these people are beneath her, and she makes sure they know it. When Mr. James is assigned to be Ms. Victoria's chauffeur for the day, he prepares himself as he always does, with a smile and a heart full of patience. He's heard about Ms. Victoria's temper from other drivers and how she's quick to find faults. Nevertheless, he enters the job with an open mind, believing that no one is beyond redemption. As the black car pulls up to her mansion, Mr. James steps out, opening the door with a polite nod. "Good morning, ma'am," he says warmly, hoping to start the day on a positive note. Ms. Victoria, with her designer handbag hanging loosely on her arm, barely acknowledges him. She steps into the car without a word, her eyes fixed on her phone as she taps away, already engrossed in her world of business and power. Once they begin the journey, the tension in the car is almost immediate. Ms. Victoria looks around the vehicle with a critical eye. "This car smells like it hasn't been cleaned properly," she mutters under her breath, but loud enough for Mr. James to hear. You'd think the least they could do is find someone who knows how to maintain a vehicle. Mr. James swallows the insult and remains professional. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll make sure to check it again when we return," he responds kindly, but Ms. Victoria doesn't even look up. She continues to complain about the air conditioning, the seat cushions, and even the route they're taking. She snaps at him for the smallest inconvenience, treating him as though he's nothing more than a nuisance in her perfect, meticulously controlled life. "Can't you drive any faster?" she barks, her eyes still glued to her phone. "I don't have all day to sit in this car, you know." Mr. James nods, remaining calm. "I'll do my best to get you there as quickly as possible, Mom." Ms. Victoria rolls her eyes, not caring about his polite response. To her, he's just another person who is there to serve her, and she treats him as such, someone who doesn't deserve her time or attention beyond his ability to do his job correctly. In her mind, people like Mr. James are invisible, meant to blend into the background of her luxurious life. As the car continues its journey, the difference between their worlds becomes painfully clear. Mr. James, a man of humble beginnings and strong values, contrasts sharply with Ms. Victoria, whose arrogance blinds her to the humanity in others. Every complaint she makes, every insult she throws, only further shows how different their perspectives on life truly are. While Mr. James believes in treating others with dignity, no matter their status, Ms. Victoria sees people like him as beneath her, a belief that will soon be tested in a way she never expects. This first encounter sets the stage for a story where kindness and cruelty collide, where Mr. James's quiet strength and patience will stand against Ms. Victoria's arrogance and lack of empathy. The question is, when pushed to the limit, will Mr. James's kindness prevail, or will Ms. Victoria's harsh nature remain unchanged? As Ms. Victoria and Mr. James enter the cozy lodge, the warmth from the fireplace wraps around them, a stark contrast to the harshness of the storm they had just endured. Ms. Victoria, limping slightly, is grateful for the shelter but maintains her composed, aloof demeanor. She's not used to feeling helpless, and the discomfort shows in the stiffness of her movements and the tightness in her expression. The lodge is small but charming, with rustic wooden beams, plaid curtains, and the aroma of fresh coffee lingering in the air. A tall, middle-aged man with kind eyes and a welcoming smile approaches them. He's dressed casually in a woolen sweater and jeans, a look of concern etched on his face as he takes in their soaked appearance. "Well, what do we have here?" he asks warmly. "You folks look like you've been through quite a storm." Mr. James steps forward, his tone respectful. "Thank you for letting us in, Mr. Robinson. It's been a rough day, but your kindness is appreciated." Ms. Victoria watches the interaction, her curiosity piqued. There's a familiarity between the two men, a shared warmth that she doesn't quite understand. Mr. Robinson reaches out to shake Mr. James's hand, but their handshake isn't the brief, impersonal gesture she's accustomed to seeing. It's warm, friendly, like two people who have known each other for a long time. "James, my friend, it's been too long," Mr. Robinson says with a grin. "Still helping people in the rain, I see." Mr. James smiles modestly. Some things never change. Rob. Ms. Victoria's eyes narrow slightly as she watches them. She had assumed Mr. James was just her chauffeur, someone with no connections or significance beyond his job. Yet here he is, speaking with the lodge owner as if they're old friends. It feels strange, like she's missing something. She frowns, dismissing the thought quickly. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Mr. Robinson then turns to Ms. Victoria, offering a polite nod. "Ma'am, you're lucky to have Mr. James here. Not many people would go out of their way to help in such terrible weather." She nods stiffly, trying to regain her composure. "Yes, well, it's his job. After all," she says, brushing off the praise. Mr. Robinson raises an eyebrow but says nothing. He gestures for them to sit near the fireplace, offering them warm blankets and a chance to dry off. As Ms. Victoria settles into a chair, she notices the way Mr. James and Mr. Robinson talk. It's like they're catching up, sharing old memories. The lodge staff brings out hot tea and a plate of sandwiches. Ms. Victoria, famished after the ordeal, thanks them and begins to eat. Mr. Robinson sits across from her, studying her carefully before glancing back at Mr. James. "You know, James, you're still one of the most honorable people I know. How's your mother doing these days?" Ms. Victoria, mid-bite, pauses. This feels too personal, too familiar. Mr. James smiles, though there's a hint of sadness in his eyes. "She's holding on, Rob. I'm doing what I can to make sure she's comfortable." Something stirs inside Ms. Victoria, curiosity mixed with confusion. She had never imagined her chauffeur would have such deep, meaningful conversations. It's almost as if he has a whole other life she knows nothing about. "What do you mean, Mr. James?" she asks, her tone softer than before. She's genuinely curious, even if she's not sure why. Mr. Robinson chuckles, as if he's heard a joke that only he and Mr. James understand. "You didn't tell her, James?" he asks, leaning back in his chair. Mr. James looks at Ms. Victoria, his eyes kind but guarded. "There's not much to tell, ma'am. Just that I've had to take on different jobs to make ends meet." Mr. Robinson sighs, shaking his head. "You're too humble, as always. You see, ma'am, Mr. James here isn't just any chauffeur. He used to run a successful business in town, until his mother's health started to decline. He sold his company and took up driving so he could cover her medical expenses." Ms. Victoria's eyes widen. She's momentarily stunned, unsure how to process this information. You used to own a business?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. The shock is clear on her face. Mr. James nods, his expression calm. "Yes, ma'am. It was a small company, but it did well. When my mother got sick, I had to make a choice. Taking care of her was more important to me than money or status." The words hang in the air, and for the first time, Ms. Victoria feels a pang of guilt. She remembers all the harsh things she said to Mr. James earlier in the car, the insults, the way she belittled him for simply doing his job. She had judged him based on his appearance and his role, never once considering that he might have a story of his own. She tries to hide her discomfort, but Mr. Robinson seems to notice. "It's easy to assume things about people when you only see them in a certain role," he says gently, his eyes meeting hers. "But people are more than their jobs. James has always been a man of integrity and courage, even when life tested him." Ms. Victoria feels a heat rise in her cheeks. She's not used to feeling ashamed, but there's no escaping it now. She realizes how wrong she's been, how she let her prejudice and sense of superiority cloud her judgment. She had seen Mr. James as nothing more than a chauffeur, someone beneath her attention. Now she understands that he's far more courageous and selfless than she ever imagined. "I didn't know," she says softly, her eyes cast down. For the first time, her voice lacks its usual sharpness. "I just assumed." Mr. James offers her a gentle smile, his eyes forgiving. "It's all right, ma'am. We all make assumptions sometimes." But Ms. Victoria feels the weight of her words, The memories of how she treated him flash before her, how she demanded, insulted, and showed no gratitude. And all this time, he had been helping her, not just because it was his job, but because he believed in being kind, even when others were not. "You could have done anything else," she says, the realization sinking in. "You could have chosen a different path." Mr. James nods. "I could have, but caring for my mother was what mattered most." Sometimes, life isn't about what we gain for ourselves, but what we give to others. Ms. Victoria's eyes well up, but she quickly blinks away the tears. She doesn't want to show her vulnerability, not after everything. But deep down, she knows she's been wrong. About Mr. James, about the way she views people. It's a humbling moment, one she never expected to face. Mr. Robinson leans forward, his eyes kind. "You're fortunate to have someone like James by your side, ma'am. Not everyone would help so selflessly." Ms. Victoria nods, a lump forming in her throat. "I see that now. I'm sorry for how I behaved." Mr. James gives a small nod. "Apology accepted, Mom." As the fire crackles and the warmth of the lodge wraps around them, Ms. Victoria finds herself feeling something she hasn't felt in a long time: gratitude and humility. She realizes that her wealth and status don't make her better than anyone else. In fact, it's people like Mr. James, with their quiet strength and selflessness, who are truly remarkable. For the rest of the evening, she remains quiet, reflecting on her behavior and the lesson she's learned. She's beginning to understand that life isn't just about what you have, but about how you treat others, no matter who they are. And for the first time, she feels a genuine desire to change. As the storm rages outside, the cozy atmosphere within the lodge brings a sense of calm. The crackling fire fills the space with warmth, and the sounds of laughter and clinking dishes from the dining area create a cozy, welcoming environment. Ms. Victoria sits at a table, her thoughts churning as she processes everything she's learned about Mr. James. She's still trying to make sense of it all when Mr. Robinson returns, carrying a stack of papers and folders under his arm. "Well, James, I think everything's finally in order for that big event," he says, dropping the stack onto the table and smiling. Mr. James nods, helping him arrange the papers. As they chat, Ms. Victoria's ears perk up. She's suddenly reminded of the reason she was rushing through the storm in the first place, an important business conference where she was supposed to meet potential investors for her latest venture. "What event are you talking about?" Ms. Victoria asks, her curiosity piqued. Mr. Robinson smiles. "Oh, it's a major business networking event. We've been planning it for months. It's happening just a few miles from here, actually." He glances at Mr. James, sharing a knowing look. "I own a few properties in the area, and we're hosting some big names in the industry." Ms. Victoria's eyes widen, and her heart skips a beat. This was the very event she had been on her way to attend. The one that could secure her new business deals and expand her empire. She had been looking forward to it for weeks, strategizing on how to impress potential partners. But now, sitting here with Mr. Robinson, she feels a knot tighten in her stomach. "Wait, you're the host?" she asks, her voice tinged with both surprise and concern. Mr. Robinson nods casually. "Yes, I am. It's one of the biggest events I've organized this year." He glances at her with a polite smile. "I take it you were planning to attend." Ms. Victoria tries to maintain her composure, but she feels her pulse quicken. She forces a smile. "Yes, I was. It's a crucial opportunity for me and my company." Mr. Robinson's expression shifts slightly, his eyes studying her with a seriousness she hadn't noticed before. "I see." He exchanges another look with Mr. James, one that feels heavy with meaning. Ms. Victoria feels the room's warmth grow cold, her sense of control slipping. There are a lot of potential investors and influential people attending. Mr. Robinson continues. "It's a place where business owners can really connect and build partnerships." He pauses, folding his hands on the table. "But you know, Ms. Victoria, business isn't just about making deals. It's about character too." Ms. Victoria's heart sinks. She knows where this is going, and a wave of panic begins to rise in her chest. She tries to defend herself, her voice tinged with a mixture of desperation and forced confidence. Of course, I understand that. Mr. Robinson holds up a hand, cutting her off gently. Before I make any business decisions, I always consider the character of the people I'm dealing with. It's important to me to work with individuals who show respect, not just to me, but to everyone around them. His eyes flicker to Mr. James, who remains quiet but attentive. Ms. Victoria feels the weight of his words pressing down on her. Her mind races, and she knows exactly where this is headed. She's losing control of the situation, and the realization is unsettling. Her usual confidence fades as she begins to grasp the consequences of her actions. You see, Ms. Victoria, Mr. Robinson continues, his tone calm but firm. James isn't just any chauffeur. He's been a loyal friend to me for many years, and he's someone I trust deeply. He pauses, allowing the words to sink in. When I found out how he was treated earlier today, it made me reconsider some of my plans. Ms. Victoria's face pales. Her usual sharp wit and commanding presence are nowhere to be found as she stares at Mr. Robinson, a pleading look in her eyes. Mr. Robinson, I didn't know. If I had known he was your friend. He shakes his head. It shouldn't matter whether or not you knew who he was, Ms. Victoria. The point is, you treated him unfairly without any reason other than the fact that he was working for you. And that speaks volumes about the kind of person you are. Ms. Victoria feels a lump form in her throat. She knows she's made a mistake, a big one. Her ambition and arrogance, the very qualities that helped her climb to success, are now the very things holding her back. She had acted without thought, without empathy, and now it's costing her a golden opportunity. Mr. Robinson, please, she says, her voice softer and more sincere than it's ever been. I know I've been wrong. I've treated people unfairly, and I deeply regret it. She glances at Mr. James, whose eyes meet hers, full of the same calm kindness he's always shown. I judged Mr. James without knowing anything about him, and I was wrong to do that. Mr. Robinson's face remains stoic, but there's a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. It's good to acknowledge mistakes, Ms. Victoria, but actions speak louder than words. I believe in giving people chances, but only when they truly demonstrate a willingness to change. Ms. Victoria takes a deep breath, feeling a wave of vulnerability she hasn't felt in years. I understand that, and I'm willing to prove it. I've spent too long assuming I was better than others because of my status and wealth. But today, I've seen that real strength lies in how we treat the people around us. She turns to Mr. James, her expression earnest. Mr. James, I am truly sorry for the way I treated you. I was wrong to make assumptions about you, and I was wrong to belittle your work. You've shown more kindness and patience than I deserved, and I want you to know that I appreciate that. I promise to change my ways. Mr. James looks at her, his eyes softening. Thank you, ma'am. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. He pauses, then offers her a warm smile. I accept your apology. Relief washes over Ms. Victoria, but she knows she still has a long way to go. She nods, feeling a sense of humility she's never felt before. I appreciate that, Mr. James. Mr. Robinson nods approvingly. Well, Ms. Victoria, I believe everyone deserves a chance to grow and learn. If you're sincere, then maybe this experience will be the turning point you need. He rises from the table, and Mr. James does the same. As they prepare to leave, Mr. James offers his hand to Ms. Victoria, helping her up gently. She smiles, grateful for his kindness. For the first time, she sees him not as a servant, but as a person of incredible character, someone far richer in spirit than she had ever been. Outside, the storm has begun to clear, and the sky is painted with hues of orange and pink as the sun begins to set. Mr. James walks with Ms. Victoria to the car, his usual calm presence reassuring her. She watches as he opens the door for her, but this time, she sees him differently. She's learned a lesson that goes beyond business or wealth. It's about humility, kindness, and respect. As she gets into the car, she looks back at Mr. Robinson, who waves from the lodge's doorway. "Good luck, Ms. Victoria. I hope this experience helps you grow," he says. Ms. Victoria nods, feeling a sense of determination. "Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I won't forget this." As the car pulls away, Ms. Victoria watches the lodge disappear in the distance. She knows she's lost a business opportunity, but she's gained something far more valuable, a lesson in humanity. She realizes that if she wants to become truly successful, she needs to start by treating others with the respect and dignity they deserve. Mr. James drives into the sunset, the road ahead glowing with the promise of a new beginning. And for Ms. Victoria, the journey is no longer just about reaching her destination. It's about finding herself and becoming a better person along the way. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe if you've not done so. Thanks.